Hello, I'm Sruthi Viswanathan, and welcome to the presentation of our paper Designing Ambient Wanderer Mobile Recommendations for Urban Exploration for DIS 2020. So let's start with an overview. I will give an introduction of our lab and this research, and then I'll discuss our methodology and our prototype, and I'll discuss our findings and their implication for designing a recommender system and conclude. So about us, we are from Naval Labs Europe, which is the biggest industrial AI research lab in France. If you would like to know more about us and our research, please visit our website europe.navallabs.com. So moving on to the introduction of our research, Designing Ambient Wanderer. With the advancement in geolocalized technologies, it is becoming easier and easier to plan a holiday on the other side of the world or to discover your own city. With these advancements in mind, we chose the situated action of mobile urban exploration here and now without any prior planning as the situated action of our research. Now, with all that's available in the Play Store, it seems possible that you can wander around the streets using just your mobile phone. But is it possible in reality? What kind of information do users need for this kind of activity? In what context? With these questions in mind, we designed a probe for Ambient Wanderer, a personalized and contextualized mobile POI recommender system. So if you're not familiar with the acronym POI, it stands for Points of Interest, which means the place one would visit, such as museums, restaurants, concerts, and like. I will explain our prototype a bit later in detail. So when we surveyed the information literature on information retrieval, we found most of the studies are between a spectrum of users. On one end of the spectrum are locals who have their home and work and move in the cities and the places they frequent. And on the other end of the spectrum are tourists who have time constraints and they are most likely to visit iconic POIs. We identified a set of users in the middle of the spectrum. These are people who have recently relocated to a new city. We call them as new locals to better identify their in-between nature to locals and tourists. We chose to study them as they are interesting for us. They are less targeted in the literature and they are more likely to look for POI information in their new habitat. Now let's move on to our methodology. So in literature, low fidelity prototyping and storyboarding have resulted in developing better futures for intelligent systems. But in our case for Ambient Wanderer, these wouldn't work. So we had to customize a hybrid Wizard of Oz methodology to bring to our participants in the experience of Ambient Wanderer in the street. So our methodology consists of 5 steps: a pre-questionnaire, the prototype, the annotation tool, the pilot study, and the experiment. With the pre-questionnaire, we found out our profile of the participants, what they like to do for leisure activities, their likes and dislikes. And we prototyped Ambient Wanderer with 3 key features in the UI. One is the localized map, and the other is information on the POIs. And then we have a specialized mindset button. So this mindset button was created by our researchers in a card sorting session. The mindsets are categories like I'm hungry and surprise me that would let the user to express their state of mind to look for POIs near them without necessarily knowing much about their environment. So we use these mindsets in our prototype to draw out what our participants need when they are wandering in the street. The mindset acted as a visual cue for us in the experiment. And we used an annotation tool to embed in the prototype whatever we found out about the participant in the pre-questionnaire, and also the variables of the context they are in, such as the weather, the time of the day, their location, and such. So for every participant, we embedded POIs in our prototype with their personal preferences and the contextual variables using this annotation tool. So each participant had a perfectly faked, personalized, and contextualized POI recommendations for them to explore the city. We ran a pilot study to remove any usability issues with our system. We found and removed them. And then we moved on to experiment with 12 new locals to Grenoble, a medium-sized city in France. So during the experiment, we first conducted a critical incident interview, and then we gave the prototype of Ambient Wanderer in an iPhone to our participants, and they were asked to move around in the street to find and explore POIs near them. Now let's briefly discuss our findings and implication for design considering the time limit. Please find a detailed description of these in our paper. The first one is support tech-free wandering. Our participants were in the habit of engaging in tech-free wandering in the city to serendipitously discover the neighborhoods. Most often, these wanders resulted in situations of breakdown, such as getting lost, getting tired, not finding any POI open, or getting annoyed and not finding anything interesting that they want to pursue. It was at this point where they took out their mobile phones and tried to find a POI near them. An implication from this were not to disturb the users when they are going on this tech-free wandering, but to be ready with pre-calculated POIs when they face a moment of breakdown. The next one is personalization. The main reason reported by our participants for failing to find POIs relevant to them in platforms such as TripAdvisor was that recommendations from these sources did not match their personal taste. They didn't connect with the person who's leaving reviews on these online platforms. So an ideal POI recommender should be personalized with reviews from people who are like-minded to the user. Triggered by boredom. When questioned about situations where they usually search for POIs to visit, we learned that boredom was the chief motivation. They were bored and looking for POIs to go outside. So a machine learning model could be used to predict when the user feels bored and proactively suggest recommendations during these moments of boredom. The next is free activities. So not only students, but even older participants with good income levels did not expect to spend money on exploring their new city. Their first intent was to find POIs which are free. Areas of interest. Discovering popular streets, squares, and neighborhood play a major role in getting familiar with the new city. We observed that our new locals did indeed need these information. So they need information about these areas of interest in addition to information about points of interest. The next is social need. Migration means making new friends. We observed our participants, whether they had migrated on their own or come with their families, they wanted to find POIs which would help them to make new social connections in their new city. So in addition to these findings, we also succeeded in validating the concept of ambient wanderer. You can see from the results of our pro questionnaire, post-find natures of search supported by the mindset was appreciated by our participants. They called our interface clean and easy. We plan to grow our collection of mindsets based on the feedback from the experiment. We also plan to develop customizable and user-generated mindsets and to work on automating the classification of different POIs into mindsets. As we had expected, our findings on new locals have emerged with connections and behaviors of locals and tourists as well. We are currently comparing our observation of new locals to that of locals and tourists in order to further precise the global picture of POI recommendation. We have illustrated a first assessment of this in this slide here with a Nightingale Rose visualization. Beyond development of Ambient Wanderer, we aim to perform studies with a larger sample, including the entire spectrum of locals, new locals, and tourists, to assess the system's fit to specific needs of these three user categories. In conclusion, the aim of this research has been to validate the concept of ambient wanderer to further understand the feature requirements on observing the mobile needs of new locals and to demonstrate the benefits of using a hybrid Wizard of Oz approach before developing the full system to investigate an intelligent system. That's all. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions or if you would like to discuss our research, please contact me at Sruthi.Viswanathan@naverlabs.com. Sorry, my email address is wrong, but it's the best way to contact me. Thank you.